All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here for the official kickoff meeting of the Ohio Inquiry Working Group. We are going to just kind of review what the working group is meant to be and give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves and then lay out some of the next steps that we're going to be pursuing as we continue on with inquiry. So before I kick things off, I do want to give Linda McKeen from the Ohio Department of Education a chance to say any welcome remarks that she would like to say, or just kind of give some context for what ODE's involvement is with this group.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Linda McKeen with the Ohio Department of Education, Social Studies Consultant. And we've been working on trying to get inquiry and best practices into the social studies classroom. And there's a challenge there of where do I find good aligned materials? And once I do that, how do I use them in my classroom? So we want to use this learning community as a place to answer those kinds of questions and learn together and create together as we move forward. And a shout out to everybody who is here supporting this work, and to Ryan Susky, who has stepped up and is going to lead us today. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, well, let me go ahead and pull this up. Hopefully this will work. All right, can everyone see my screen? Awesome, all right. Starting off on the right foot. So as I mentioned, this is the kickoff meeting to the Ohio Inquiry Working Group. And so you're here because you've expressed interest in joining the working group and being a part of what Linda mentioned of, kind of increase inquiry in Ohio, and especially the creation of resources that we can utilize to increase inquiry in Ohio. So I should say at the outset that the Ohio Inquiry Working Group is a joint collaboration of multiple Ohio institutions and organizations. So we're very, very happy to have the partnership of the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, the Ohio Council for the Social Studies, the Ohio Department of Education, Kent State University, Bowling Green State University, Ohio Wesleyan University, University of Akron, and the University of Cincinnati. Now, there are other groups and individuals involved, but in some instances, people are partnering up with this in their individual capacity, but not necessarily on behalf of their organization or institution. So what exactly is this group, right, that you've expressed interest in joining? Well, our hope is to have a group that will meet on a regular basis to learn about C3 and its implementation, with the goal of constructing C3 lessons that are aligned to Ohio's state standards and can be distributed to classroom educators throughout Ohio. The group is, of course, open to classroom educators, education professors, district curriculum coordinators, and other education professionals in the community. So we have a couple of goals for the working group that we hope we'll be able to complete through the training process in our time together. We would like to complete what we're calling the Ohio Inquiry On-Ramp, kind of a training schedule of some checkpoints to get through to really get a teacher from the beginning stages of inquiry all the way up to the point where they actually feel comfortable using inquiry in the classroom. We'd like to create at least one standards-aligned focused inquiry per working group member. So that might mean that some people are writing more than one, but our goal really is to at least have one for the number of members that we have in the group. And eventually all of those will get housed on the Ohio hub of c3teachers.org. And then of course we want to lay some foundation for future inquiry work here in Ohio. So the Ohio Inquiry On-Ramp that we're talking about really is, kind of a phase-based training system that we're implementing to get teachers from the point where they understand the theory of inquiry and why it's really good for our students, all the way to the point where they actually feel comfortable creating their own inquiries for use in the classroom. While there are certainly a lot of good inquiries out there, there really aren't a ton right now that are specifically geared to the Ohio standards. So we really want to take this opportunity to actually work through the creation of vetted resources that we know are aligned to the Ohio standards that we can start distributing to teachers that make them feel like inquiry is really possible for them and their students. So we'll work through some of the theory. We'll go into how you actually teach an inquiry-based lesson plan using other examples that have been created. We'll use those as models to actually work on creating our own inquiries that will go through kind of a series of revisions collectively. And then the future work really is about scaling up, right? Making inquiry work across your curriculum and hopefully across multiple grade levels in a school district. in terms of what are you actually committing to, right? It's kind of starting to sound like a lot of work. Ultimately, we're envisioning about 2 meetings per month. Our hope is that those meetings will be scheduled around people's availability. So it's actually a survey that I'll be giving a link to at the end that'll ask you some questions about when you're available to meet. And we'll try to find times that work for as many people's schedules as possible. But we'll have about 2 of those per month. And then you're going to have 2 one-on-one check-in meetings with the coordinating members of the working group to actually check in on your progress on the inquiries and do some of that stress testing that is required to really get a well-formed inquiry. Outside of our meeting time, we are going to be asking people to work individually or in groups on the creation of focused inquiries that are aligned to the standards. It's kind of difficult to say how long that takes, just because it's going to depend on how familiar you are with the different documents in that area of study, right? It might require some background reading for you. It might require a bit more discovery than you might usually face when just making a lesson plan. But it's somewhere in the area of about 10 hours of work to create a focused inquiry. We may have some additional readings or exercises based on kind of how we're progressing up the on-ramp. We'll be checking in with that, kind of taking the temperature and seeing how comfortable people feel with the inquiry creation process. And we may need to, incorporate in some additional exercises or assignments that'll help, to get them further on that. And then we're also going to be asking each inquiry group member to give feedback on at least 2 other inquiries that colleagues have created in the working group. That way, all of the inquiries are getting at least 3 reads, right? They're getting 1 read by one of the coordinating members who has experienced inquiry. Then they're getting 2 additional reads by colleagues, to give some feedback on making them tighter for students. We're hoping to actually begin having these bi-monthly meetings in September, so coming up quite soon here. And then we hope to complete all of the focused inquiries by December 1st. The way we have it chartered out right now, they'll all be done before we go on Thanksgiving break. Now, of course, this is just getting to the focused inquiry stage. With luck, the group will enjoy the process and will want to keep working. And we can, kind of springboard off of this experience into additional inquiries, the longer form inquiries that can compose a week's worth of classroom instruction. So what are the next steps, right? Where do we go from here? We do have a link right here, and I'm going to paste this link into the chat as well, so you can go to this link and fill this out. This is just a quick survey to get some background information on you as an educator, what content areas you're working in, and then to assess your availability. So we'll use this information to determine kind of what the working groups might be, if there are some content alignment or some schedule alignments that we can utilize, and we'll schedule all the meetings based on the feedback we receive in that. And then additionally, we'll want you to start thinking about the area of focus for your focused inquiry. So, is there a standard within your curriculum that really stands out that you'd like to work on? Sometimes good inquiries start from an artifact, right? There might be, a historical object, or a document that really, inspires you and gets you thinking about the big questions within your discipline. So we're going to work with teachers to actually start identifying those and really start drilling down into the content so that when we begin our work on the inquiries, they have a bit more direction, right? They don't feel like you're kind of just floating out there in the ether to work through. So I just talked at you quite a bit. We do want to open it up for questions and see if there are any kind of questions, concerns, comments, thoughts. The world is your oyster in this portion of the meeting. And this is also a good time for anything that I've missed from other members of the working group, the planning committee. Please feel free to chime in with things you think would be helpful for folks to know.
I guess I'll start then.
Yeah,
What's the plan? I mean, we're putting these things together, but what is the final goal? How is that going to be provided to other teachers? If it is, what's going to be the avenue that's going to be used for that?
So the goal will be to actually generate at least one focus inquiry per teacher, and then those are going to get uploaded into the c3teachers.org Ohio Hub. right? So and I can pull up a window to actually show people the c3teachers.org. So other states actually have hubs already, right? So if you're a teacher, for example, in the state of New York, you can very easily go to C3 Teachers and actually start finding inquiries that are aligned to your classroom. So when you click on this hub button right here, you'll see these are all the states that have hubs, right? So teachers in these areas can actually click on their inquiry hub and find inquiries that are already aligned and have been vetted to these standards. We would like to have one for Ohio, right? So right now we have about 12 inquiries that are ready to go into the hub, and we're working with the C3 framers to actually get that happening. But in full disclosure, they're all inquiries that we've created at OCLRE, which means they're all focused on civics and they are primarily geared toward high school. We would love to see an Ohio hub that actually has elementary inquiries and geography inquiries and economic inquiries, really kind of reflecting the full perspective of social studies in the state of Ohio. So that's the ultimate goal then, is one of those focus inquiries per teacher, and then one of those having those multiple areas represented that teachers can then go to the hub and download.
Is there a goal in terms of number of teachers involved, number of lesson plans created?
So we think that it's a realistic goal right now to have each teacher in the group work on at least one, especially when you're first getting started, right? The first couple of inquiries you create definitely take some time, to kind of go through, and you need time to let it marinate, right? And to change your mind about some things. We've had about 27 people express interest in the working group. So in theory, right, we're looking at about 27 inquiries that could come out of this process. But we'll be recording all of the trainings so that additional teachers who maybe couldn't be part of the working group but want to learn about this process can also create inquiries that they submit for review to upload into the hub. Because really, once we've laid the groundwork, then this hub becomes, a long-standing place for these to get uploaded. So teachers are still adding inquiries, to the other state hubs.
The last question for me, and then I'll let anybody else.
This is great.
As part of Ohio History Connection, what are the ways that we can contribute to that? Because you mentioned about the artifacts and documents. We can be available to teachers to provide more primary sources of other things, but what other ways do you think we could be supporting?
Yeah, so it's a perfect question, actually, and a nice segue into what we're going to be asking teachers to do in some of our first meetings. Actually, we'd like teachers to think about organizations in Ohio that they can partner with, because, there are really fantastic institutions here in the state of Ohio that are a tremendous resource to teachers that perhaps they haven't discovered yet. So there are also organizational hubs on C3 that kind of show the different groups that work on this, right? So for example, the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian has a hub where they create inquiries for Indigenous history. In the same way, we believe that groups like the Federal Reserve Bank, the Ohio History Connection, the Underground Railroad Museum, all of these groups can help to provide tools to teachers that have already been created, right, for things like how to evaluate sources with your students, or collections of documents on certain themes, right? So the Library of Congress has a fantastic thematic collection where you could say, okay, I'm interested in the American Negro Baseball League, right? And you can go and you can find information about here's a picture of the Homestead Grays at their first home game, right? In the same way, Ohio History Connection really has a tremendous collection of Ohio-specific resources that we'd really like to celebrate in this process. So, being a resource to teachers, providing ideas and collections to the extent they exist already. Any of the librarians or archivists who would like to contribute as well would also be welcome in this process.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Other questions, thoughts, comments?
Hey Ryan, this is Zan. So a follow-up question for institutions. So for the time commitment, so obviously we will make ourselves open to teachers, but I'm also thinking for those that maybe are working on high school inquiries around economics, they may want to talk to some of our economists or other individuals at the bank. So will they reach out and we'll schedule time? Do you know how much time you think they'll be interacting with us, or is that something that we should look into, or are they just going to want existing resources? I guess just kind of what those interactions might look like.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that, economists would be available to speak with teachers who are working on, topics of interest, we would absolutely welcome that. So that kind of falls in that realm of like the outside work that might be required. So for example, I have a lot of experience in teaching about, World War II, particularly from the European perspective, right? But I may have a lot less information about, say, modernization in Europe, and I need to talk to somebody. For me, writing an inquiry in that field would take a lot more work, and I would probably benefit from talking to experts in that area. So if the experts aligned with, the bank are willing to meet with teachers, have phone conversations, or even just answering questions via email, all of that is absolutely welcome and would be greatly appreciated. And I should say too, with the meetings that are happening, twice a month, because we recognize that it won't always be possible for everyone to attend those, we'll be recording all of the sessions and posting them online. And as long as people are keeping in contact with us about their progress, submitting any of the check-in points for the inquiries, people can participate in this asynchronously. That's completely fine.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And Sharisha, I think that's a fantastic point, right? Thinking about this as an opportunity to talk about anti-racism, in the lens of American history. So, a great next question for that, right, becomes, are there any institutions or groups here in Ohio that might be a good resource for you as you work through that process, right? So if you were thinking about a specific inquiry, who might be the partners that you want to reach out to for assistance here?
So, Carla, Carla, because I know I came in a little bit late because I was on another Zoom call. But so what? Because I know the big thing is the anti-racism education, American history. How districts and probably on the state level are trying to figure out how do we incorporate that in our daily instruction. And I'm also an adjunct professor too, because I'll be teaching a couple courses in this area too this upcoming fall. So just trying to figure out, how to go about. I think because anti-racism is going to probably be a common theme on many cases, not all cases, But no, and economics can fall into that when we talk about equity. But just trying to figure out, I know probably the Cleveland History Center. I know Ohio Connection would probably be a good partners. I can't think of any other history centers that are based in Ohio that would probably be good partners, but those are the ones I was thinking initially.
Yeah, on our end, Ohio History Connection is also like, we have all these sites, right? And we are working very closely with the staff of the National Afro-American Museum. So we're actually going to be working very closely with them to create education content. So I could, if you reach out, I can put my email here on the chat.
Okay.
And if you want to reach out, we can talk a little bit more about it.
Perfect.
And there might be some other opportunities too, right? With like the, in Cincinnati, the Underground Railroad and Freedom Museum would be a great resource to chat with.
Okay.
It looks like Linda's recommending also Ripley House. Okay. There's lots of really good opportunities, to reach out. Now, the challenge, right, becomes there are certainly national organizations who would have a lot to contribute to these discussions. And while we certainly, welcome including some of their materials, our hope really is to, focus this on Ohio and show what the Buckeye State has to offer, particularly because, for educators, there's certain groups that we reach out to just instinctively, right? A lot of social studies teachers are working with, the Gilder Lehrman, they're working with Facing History, they're working with Teaching Tolerance and Library of Congress. But a lot of our teachers don't know that, for example, the Ohio Supreme Court actually has a visitor education center and civic education center that has resources and lesson plans for Ohio judicial history, right? And so we really want to be able to spotlight those and show all the tremendous work that we have right here in Ohio for teachers to take advantage of.
Right.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? I'll even take complaints. I don't know if I can solve them, but I'll take them.
Ryan, this is Zan again. Also, it's awesome to finally see you. I feel like I haven't talked to you in over a year.
Ooh.
But if we want to be an institution that's available to teachers, are you guys working on a list or something with like a contact or like that we could put ourselves on?
Yeah, so we're hoping to kind of crowdsource that list during our first couple of meetings based on what the teachers are saying or groups they want to work with. But we absolutely welcome representatives from different organizations to contribute, kind of put themselves forward. So we'll make sure that we put, the Western Reserve, and we'll put you and Kaz down as contact points. And you're of course welcome to join all the meetings that we have that your schedule allows. So with that, I am going to go ahead and put up our last kind of contact screen, and just kind of to keep things somewhat focused for the moment. I'm putting up my contact info and Linda's info. Feel free to email either of us. The group has a Google folder we're working on, so we can certainly keep in contact, and we'll make sure that information gets to the right person. But long term, we will have a contact list. We'll just get permission from everyone to share their email addresses and put that contact list together. That won't get posted online anywhere, so it won't be like your email is just kind of floating out in the online world. It'll be something we'll be distributing only to group members. So some modicum of control on that. All right, and well, with that, that takes us to the end of the kickoff meeting. Please do remember to go to bit.ly/OH-inquiry. Make sure you put that dash in there. This is case sensitive, so it needs to be all lowercase there for it to work. Your feedback on that is really, really helpful for us as we start trying to nail down that first meeting date. And remember too, if you can't make the meeting, we will certainly post this all online for you to be a part of. All right, well, I'll be sticking around for a little bit, so feel free to stay behind if you have any questions or would like to discuss even some ideas about some inquiries you might want to start working on. And of course, thank you for being here.